California, a brilliant man who never got close to about anybody. Richard Nixon, we won't forget, but perhaps for the wrong reason. Became well known when called a communist, but he was not like crazy McCarthy, vice president with Eisenhower, could be JFK in a close one.
Throughout the long and difficult period of Watergate, I have felt it was my duty to persevere. I have never been a quitter. To leave office before my term is completed is abhorrent to every instinct in my body. But as president, I must put the interests of America first.
The Democratic National Presidential Press Secretary called the incident a third-rate burglary.
Nixon's life had Shakespearean overtones. He achieved great heights, but he's ground down by his own flaws.
The Watergate scandal broke wide open today.
He was as smart as a whip.
He would not quit.
The president has a responsibility to defend this office, which I shall continue to do.
There was an effort made to somewhat contain the investigation.
The cover-up had already begun, and Nixon was doomed.
Therefore, I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
Nixon was shy,
patriotic,
visionary. Nixon is this mass jumble of conflicting qualities.
He was shy. He was awkward. He could be a very kind person, could be insecure.
suspicious. You could just feel his compassion in a good sense.
Nixon came from very humble origins in Southern California.
Just a little old house, not pretentious, just something that everyday people where they would live. That's where he grew up.
When Nixon was a young boy, his little brother died. When Nixon was 18 or 19, his older brother, Harold, died.
Dick just picked up the mantle at that point, and he was the eldest son and destined to become the leader of the family.
Nixon, from a very early age, seems to have been drawn to public service.
Service through politics is the way to go. Dick picked it up because he was a student of history. He just loved it. And Pat Nixon was the one that really, a new spirit in the family. Competitive, loved to laugh.
Nixon understood himself to say that he was an introvert in an extrovert profession.
Nixon was not a natural. Nixon had to learn and study and work for every step he was able to take to the pinnacle of American politics. Nixon spent his whole life winning and losing and coming back.
He was a relentless fighter.
Not 1 cent of $18,000 or anybody else.
I am a man who was aggressive, but I am a man who battled for what I believe.
And there was something admirable about this. He was not a quitter. I'm not a quitter.
I don't believe that I ought to quit, because I am not a quitter.
He had been in the House of Representatives. He had gone on to the Senate at a very young age. He had become vice president before he was 40 years old. Perseverance is why he could come back from the defeats.
John F. Kennedy defeated GOP standard-bearer Richard Nixon.
I think he started figuring out how he was going to get back in the public life right away.
What should I call it? Jack, I wouldn't really worry about that. I've been called everything.
When Richard Nixon lost the governor's race in California in 1962, the reporters thought he was finished.
You don't have Nixon to kick around anymore. Because, gentlemen, this is my last press conference.
But the thing about Nixon is that he never gave up. He never quit.
Nixon will announce within the next week that he will run again for president. Not so much that he will run again, it's that he will never really stop.
Richard Nixon was the biggest loser in American politics, and 4 years later, as he was raising his hand as President of the United States, people could not believe it.
Richard Milhouse Nixon, do solemnly swear.
In these difficult years, America has suffered from a fever of words. We cannot learn from one another until we stop shouting at one another.
Richard Nixon was taking over the presidency of the United States during the greatest social, moral, cultural crisis and division in the country since the Civil War.
You have the assassinations of Martin Luther King and Bobby Kennedy.
Full integration of the South has still not happened.
Our families were coming apart by a war that we didn't fully grasp.
When Nixon became president, there were 500,000 Americans in Vietnam.
Nixon saw youth and others mobilized around an anti-war movement.
I respect your ideas. I share your concern for peace.
He promised the Americans to get the United States out of Vietnam, and I think many people hope that he'd be able to do it.
Grasp a foreign policy and a strategic approach.
When the communists took over in China, Mao made a very famous speech in which he said, China in the Cold War, moving towards the Soviet bloc.
This is at the height of the Cold War, when we feared the Soviet menace.
There can be no stable and enduring peace without the participation of the People's Republic of China and its 750 million people.
The president felt that if we started doing business with China, we would get the Soviet Union's attention. He said, I'm going to go to Peking and I'm going to go to Moscow.
Beijing, historic site for an unprecedented meeting between East and West.
That handshake went out all over the world, and it sent a tremendous message.
For an American president to be sitting there in Beijing talking to Chairman Mao, this showed that something had changed.
Nixon was in his element with world leaders. He could discuss issues of peace on the basis of common objectives.
He goes to the Soviet Union, first president ever to go to Moscow. He personally negotiates an arms control treaty.
We shall sometimes be competitors, but we need never be enemies.
Nixon provided a vision for peace in which all significant sectors could participate.
The President of the United States had been walking on the wall of China. The President of the United States was walking the streets of Moscow. We now hear when a statesman does something bold, or something courageous, visionary,
Transformative.
something dramatic,
Someone you don't expect.
Complete surprise.
historically important, which changes world politics forever. They call it his Nixon in China moment.
Nixon said he wanted to be remembered as a peacemaker, but I think he wanted to be remembered as a servant.
Nixon lives for 2 decades after resigning the presidency in 1973. And against all odds, Richard Nixon becomes a valued advisor to Ronald Reagan, to George H.W. Bush, and remarkably, to Bill Clinton.
He was a statesman who sought to build a lasting structure of peace.
5 presidents attend his funeral. And Clinton urges in his eulogy for people to judge Richard Nixon on the entirety of his political career.
He had so many ideas.
He put the prestige and power of his office on the line to make sure that things would go forward in America.
He had, in my opinion, very clear goals to leave this country better than he found it. And I think that propelled him.
History is made by humans. Nixon was intensely human. He did have flaws, but his very ability to overcome those flaws, to fight against his fears and his weaknesses, gave him a kind of power and drive that led him to do great things.
The greatness, how magnificent it is to be on the highest mountain.
Nixon now, Nixon now. He's made the difference. He's shown us how. Nixon now, more than ever. Nixon now. Listen, America, Nixon now. Reaching out across the sea, making friends where those used to be, giving hope to humanity. More than ever, Nixon now for you and me. Nixon now, Nixon now. He's made the difference. He's shown us how. Nixon now, more than ever. Nixon now. Listen, America, Nixon now. Reaching out across the land to listen to us, to understand, to help us shape our destiny. More than ever, Nixon now for you and me. Nixon now, Nixon now. He's made the difference. He's shown us how. Nixon now, more than ever. Nixon now. Listen, America, Nixon now. Nixon now, more than ever. Nixon now. Listen, America, Nixon now. Reaching out across the sea, making friends where those used to be, giving hope to humanity. More than ever, Nixon now for you and me. Nixon now, Nixon now. He's made the difference. He's shown us how. Nixon now, more than ever. Nixon now. Listen, America, Nixon now. Reaching out across the land to listen to us, to understand, to help us shape our destiny. More than ever, Nixon now for you and me. Nixon now, Nixon now. He's made the difference. He's shown us how. Nixon now, more than ever. Nixon now.
Very good looking. There's a house in Yorba Linda that has been there many years. Once this house was filled with laughter and also many tears. In this house a child was born, and his mother prayed that night that he'd grow to be a leader, and he'd always fight for right. Richard Nixon is the man. He'll do everything he can to bring peace to our land through the guiding of God's hand. There's been Washington, Lincoln, many presidents before. There's been presidents in peacetime, presidents in war. But there's never been a time when the need was so great to help our friends against aggression and to stamp out racial hate. Richard Nixon is the man. He'll do everything he can to bring peace to our land through the guiding of God's hand. Let us stand and all be counted as the ones who do their best to make our country what it should be. Pray that God will do the rest. So no matter to bring peace to our land through the guiding of God's hand. There's been Washington and Lincoln, many presidents before. There's been presidents in peacetime, presidents in war. But there's never been a time when the need was so great to help our friends against aggression and to stamp out racial hate. Richard Nixon is the man. He'll do everything he can to bring peace to our land through the guiding of God's hand. Let us stand and all be counted as the ones who do their best to make our country what it should be. Pray that God will do the rest. So no matter who you are or which party you belong, let us all sing together Richard Nixon's victory song. Richard Nixon is the man.